You're listening to Your Magical Midlife. This podcast is for women who are seekers, dreamers, and out-of-the-box thinkers. If you're a Gen X woman who never quite fit in, and probably never will, listen up. I'm Kate Higgins, your host. I'm a licensed clinical social worker and coach, and I'm here to guide you through the expansive, exhilarating, and sometimes exhausting crossroads that we find ourselves in at midlife. Whether you're a seasoned listener or just joining the adventure, think of this podcast as your hot pink convertible cruising down the highway of change. Together we'll navigate the sometimes baffling backroads of midlife and collect all the cool souvenirs along the way. Get in and buckle up. Our map may have flown out the window miles ago, but that doesn't mean we aren't going to have a blast. Let's hit the road and discover the magic just around the bend. Wiley Women is a wellness brand that wants you to live your best midlife. Developed by a naturopath, they offer tinctures, supplements, and drink mixes. Wiley uses plant medicine and clinical studies to demystify and embrace the hormonal powers and hidden complexities of grown women from the inside. Female formulated and female founded. Plus, they offer free shipping and easy returns. I love the Unworried tincture, which has bacopa, holy basil, passion flower, and reishi. It helps calm my body and stops the spinouts. It reduces jitters and lightens my mood. Go to www.wileywomen.com and use code KATEH2O at checkout to get 20% off. That's www.wileywomen.com and use code KATEH2O for 20% off. Amy Gabrielle, aka Jenny the Manhattan Milf, rose to unexpected internet notoriety after she decided to create an online photo gallery of herself in various stages of undress as a way to process the grief of losing her husband. This is a story of resilience and vulnerability. She is a smart lady who has a lot to say about being a woman in midlife and showing real body positivity, imperfections and all, along with her gorgeous vulnerability. I'm really pleased to have Amy on the show. Thank you for being on. I really appreciate it. I want to talk to you about grief and your process and why you chose to do what you chose to do, and if it's helped you, if it's helped you process everything. Although it's an unusual way to handle grief.
It is, although the more I learn about it, it's not as rare as I thought, but nobody talks about it. And that's because we don't talk about sexuality in general, right? So why would it be like, okay, it's great to talk about it in the context of grief? So one of the things that a lot of people do in the beginning when they have a big loss is dissociate from the loss in order to kind of just function. So, we have kind of like the fight, flight, freeze responses. And I think there's like a frozenness, but it's just like the emotional frozen so that you can get through the administrative stuff that you have to get through when anybody dies. And it, depending on the circumstances, it could be like a big thing you have to go through, like selling a house or, and if you have kids, I have a son, it was 9, like you have to keep going. Right. And for me, I really didn't want to like jump back into my feelings. I don't think I did it consciously, but I was afraid of the really big feelings. And I chose, as a lot of people do, to occupy myself with, I don't know if I'd say it was an addiction, but keeping busy. And for me, that meant talking to, chatting with guys online and meeting them and having sex and yeah, it was a loneliness, but I never chose to meet anybody that was like appropriate for a relationship because I don't think unconsciously I didn't really want that, even though I did start dating somebody sort of eventually, and then that didn't work out. And over the last 2 years is when I've really been able to like be back in my body, back in my emotions, and really feel the pain of losing my husband. And yeah, it's a scary thing because I think a lot of people feel like it's never going to stop. If I start crying or I get upset, it's never going to stop. And the only thing to do is to just do it and learn from repeated exposure that you will come out of it
Yeah.
and that it will happen again.
I have definitely had periods of my life. I've never lost a serious partner to death. I've lost them to being broken up with, of course.
Yeah.
But I remember I had a casual boyfriend who died much after we had broken up. And I remember thinking, if I allowed myself to cry, I'm never going to be able to stop. And that was a very frightening feeling because I'm a control freak. And I didn't want to unravel and never be able to like pull myself back together.
Yeah, I definitely felt that. I had also suffered from depression from the time I was like 19, panic attacks, depression. And I should say that it was well controlled. Maybe in a way it was like better that I was already being treated because I know a lot of widows who are so shocked by the anxiety that you feel when like you think of grief, you're just going to be sad. Right? It's like extreme sadness and we're going to cry, but it's so much more. It's really, it's a trauma to your brain and your brain reacts as if it were like hit with a frying pan. You know, that it's very disorienting. You know, you're used to being in a space with another person and all of a sudden they're not there and your brain is like, it's unconscious almost. It's like, where did they go? And because you can't figure it out, it's just like this anxiety that you don't know what it's about. It's just almost like this panic that is free floating and not related to anything that's happening in real life. Like there's new tigers or cars coming to hit you and since I had already like experienced that for a long time when I was younger, I already knew like a lot of breathing techniques and that doesn't mean you're going crazy. But for somebody who's never felt anything like that before, it's incredibly frightening because you do think that you are going like nuts. So, yeah, I just wanted to like circle back 1 second to like the way that I handled like being dissociated. I think a lot of people also, you know, drinking is another way that people, you know, and I think I did a little bit of like a lot of things. I mean, I wasn't gambling, but, you know, it was nothing that became like I couldn't function anymore. But shopping, you know, for me, it was lingerie. For other people, it's, you know, bedroom sets and clothes and presents for people. You know, we never had a lot of alcohol in our apartment. And I decided I needed a bar. I needed a full bar with a bar cart. And so, you know, I mean, I drank not to excess or anything, but it was just like things that didn't seem typical of me, who I was before. And I think maybe that this also like by design, because I didn't want to be like a widow. I wanted to pretend maybe that I was single and that I was going to have fun and I had this, you know, newfound freedom. And yeah, I think a lot of people grieve right away. And I think if you can, that's better. It's almost like 2 years after the fact of my husband dying, it's hit me, that grief. And it's like very disorienting, I think, for me, but also other people, because it's like, well, aren't you better by now? Like, but you know what I mean? Like, shouldn't I be better? And I thought that too. I thought after, a year and you're done and you're like moving on, um, and it doesn't work that way.
Oh,
um,
a year after my mother, 2 years after my mother died, it was definitely more than a year, definitely more than I thought. I should be over it, right?
right.
I was in my car, at a red light, listening to, a Spotify playlist, and this song came on that I only had the vaguest connection to my mother with the song. And it was like she had died that morning. I had to like pull into a parking lot and
Right.
just wail,
Right. Well, I think we're kind of used to seeing the graph of like more time equals less sadness. And the farther we're away from something happening. And I guess, if you like skin your knee, like that, something like that, even a broken arm or a breakup, it just doesn't hit the same way as the permanence of a death. And it is shocking to have that, like, your reaction of it just happened. And it was, a couple of years ago. And I think maybe the episodes happen less frequently over time, but they still happen every once in a while. And music is such a connector. Music, sometimes for people, it's smell or a place. I know that there are a couple of songs that I played for. So Stephen had we had a Zoom memorial because it's kind of like the tail end of COVID, and I didn't want people flying in, and put together this little montage of him. And so I had 2 songs that were played over it. And whenever I hear those songs, it's, and sometimes I played them on purpose because I just like need to get it out. There's a catharsis to it now. And maybe it feels even better to do it intentionally. So like you said, that feeling of control, that maybe you can't control the tears, but like you control where you are. Like,
Right.
I can do it. I'm not out in public, like we're driving or someplace, at a restaurant.
Somewhere inconvenient.
Yes, inconvenient. That's a nice way to put it. Yes.
So tell me a little bit, if you don't mind, about the background of your relationship, what happened, how long you guys were married, and when you passed.
Yeah. So Stephen and I met. We actually met on JDate. We are both Jewish, but not really religious. I'm like not religious at all, but so it was before like being technology. So it was more like the beginning of internet dating, and you actually had to like meet the person or talk to them on the phone. Like there wasn't any texting. That was in 2007. And we had one date. We were together for the whole day. He had just turned 39. I turned 40, and neither one of us had been married before. And we were just together after that. He moved in with me like 6 months later, and we were married a year after we met in 2008. So we were married for 13 years, and we went through 5 rounds of IVF to have our son. So really like the first 3 years is like we were trying, and then we had him. And yeah, I mean, I guess because we were older, like we really just wanted to dive into that family life. For better or worse, we kind of became like mommy and daddy. And so we didn't have this like passionate, like in your 20s, it was more like a partnership, but a love partnership. And our son also is on the autism spectrum. So that kind of unfolded slowly. He wasn't diagnosed till he was 4, but, there was like, he needed OT, he needed like PT, he needed some early intervention. And so he needed extra attention. So we really just, the three of us, like, were always together.
So let me just
And
clarify
yeah,
something. Because you guys got together and then you'd started IVF how long into your marriage?
it was less than a year into it.
And IVF puts such a strain on couples because it's expensive. The success rate is not high.
Yeah.
And I don't think people really understand how physically demanding it is to go through IVF.
Yeah. I don't even think I realized it. And again, maybe I was dissociated from the experience to an extent because I just was like on that hamster wheel. Like, okay, this didn't work. Let's do the next thing. I had a miscarriage the second round at 12 weeks. And like, even that, I don't even feel connected to that really. It was kind of like, okay, that happened and let's keep moving forward. And on the fifth try, it worked. But yeah, even that, it's like, I don't know how detailed you want to get into it, but like when you're pregnant and you're older and you need supplemental hormones. So for the first 12 weeks, every night I had to get progesterone like shots in my butt. But even then, it's almost like not, I remember it, but I don't feel so connected to it. I don't remember it as being so horrible, but thinking about it, I'm like, God, that must have been a lot to go through,
That is a lot to go through. Yeah.
Yeah.
So you had a baby, and then
Mhm.
how old was your son? How long you guys been together when Stephen got diagnosed?
Okay. So Stephen was diagnosed in 2018. So we had been together for 10 years. I guess I think of it as we had a really great 10 years of marriage. And then the last 3 were really hard because when he was diagnosed, he had a primary tumor, but it already metastasized to both his lungs. And so there was no cure. Like they told us 3 to 5 years is what he had. And he lived for 3 years. He did have a really good quality of life on chemo. It made him tired, but he handled it really well until he went on a trial. And like that, the last 2 months were really, really hard. But for the most part, it was almost like we could forget, sort of. And then the pandemic happened and we rented a house in the suburbs because I'm in New York City. And that it was just, we're hearing about, containers that were opening up for becoming morgues and stuff at local hospitals. And he was very immunocompromised, right? His immune system was suppressed, and I didn't want him to have to be in elevators with other people. So we rented a house, and it was very like just the 3 of us kind of, hanging out for long periods of time. And yeah, like you can almost forget, it's just like, oh, like nobody's living a normal life, right? Everybody's living this like crazy COVID life. And we are too. He lived for 3 years and it was really hard the last 2. So he died August of 2021. So it's been like just over 3 years. Henry was, our son was 6 when his dad was diagnosed with terminal cancer. And then he was 9 when he died, and he's 12.
Wow. So he's really stepping into that adolescence.
Yeah. We had a fight this morning. Just because it's like, he's supposed to get up and he doesn't, he's tired. He doesn't get up and, and it's hard in that I feel this sense of guilt that I want to be everything for him because he doesn't have a dad. And that sucks. But at the same time, my capacity, it's like I need to be twice as good, but I feel like my capacity is cut in half because I'm doing all the things. Like Stephen loved to cook. He did all the food shopping. And it's not something I'm interested in that I like. And to take all that on, it just feels like so much on top of all the other, things
Yeah.
that you have to do every day.
Yeah, my situation is completely different. But just this morning, I was crying in my kitchen to my partner about like I've hit the upper limit of what my capacity is to manage things. And I don't think I've hit my capacity before. I'm not used to being like, I can't.
Right.
And I think a lot of women push themselves. Maybe men do too, probably in a different way. But emotionally, women push themselves to their capacity all the time. It's very humbling to hit your capacity and be like, I can't go further than this.
Right. I mean, a lot of it is emotional capacity, right? I hit that before I hit the physical.
Yeah.
Because I feel like I can push through some of the physical stuff. Although not this past July, the one before that, I had back surgery because I had a herniated disc and it needed to be operated on. And, it's like we feel inside like we are, or I feel like maybe in my early 40s, but my body is not that anymore. That really is the first thing that made me feel more like fragile. Like, because I was so debilitated, I had to walk with a cane because I had like a sciatica going down my leg. And I've never had that kind of nerve pain before. And I thought, how can I keep going like this? If I was disabled and I'm thinking, how am I going to take care of my son, if I can't do this? And so after I had the surgery and now I've been much better and I do PT, I still do physical therapy because I'm like afraid. I don't want to slide back into, where I could be hurt like that again. And it is humbling, because I remember being a kid and like, making fun of my mom when she would like, those aches and pains of getting up and down and stuff. And I'd be like, oh, come on. And now it's like, I get it. I get it.
Yeah. So tell me how the Manhattan Milf was born from grief. How did that happen? Because that wouldn't be his first impulse.
No. So while I was doing all of this dating, sleeping around, whatever, I started taking pictures of myself in lingerie and some even completely naked. And it was like this currency that like I would send back and forth with different guys. I think some of it was also just like, I didn't care, because I always thought whatever you put on the internet could be public at any, time, or anything that I guess that you send, electronically. And I was like, I held the hand of my husband while he died. So fuck it. If somebody sees me naked, like who cares if I'm naked? Like nobody cares. I'm nobody. I'm not, famous or anything. But I think that was really an extreme. But the thing is, I really liked the creativity and I started to get better and better. And like my pictures started to look better. It's made me feel like relevant and made me feel like pretty. And it gave me attention, male attention where, I went from being somebody's everything to like nobody's anything. Like nobody was, asking how my day was or, if I made it home on a flight or, that kind of thing. And so I developed some relationships with men that were a little bit closer. And one of them, he was married. We were not in love at all, but he's actually the one who came up with because I decided I was going to use Instagram as like an online gallery for my pictures. I was so naive. I didn't know anything about like, you can't post nipples and things like that. I'm thinking like, they're somewhat artistic, they're not pornographic. I didn't think. And one of my first pictures that I put up, I was wearing a maid's outfit and I tagged the hotel that I was in. And I have a feeling the hotel probably was the one that reported me because I'd never been reported before, but that was like a month after I started the account and it was taken down. But I learned from that. And yeah, I don't tag hotels anymore. But so that this male friend, I'm like, well, what should I call the account? I don't know. And I was keeping my identity completely separate. So I wasn't using my real name. He's like, how about Jenny, the Manhattan Milf? And I was like, okay, that sounds good. So that's what it was. And I was Jenny for a while. And then I started to like write about my experience and talk more openly about my experience with my husband and about grief. And my captions were about grief and, how I was trying to move forward and resilience as a woman in midlife. And I guess that's when I decided to use my real name. So I'm Amy Gabrielle. I do have the last name, but I don't use that. And actually, I always wanted to just be Amy Gabrielle. So that's how that came about. So I am like, I'm integrated now. But some people do still call me Jenny online because I guess they don't look at my page or whatever. And that's fine with me. So as I started writing more and more, like I was writing too much to fit in like the caption. You're allowed 2,200 characters, including spaces. So in February, I started a Substack and I wrote a memoir. And so as I wrote the chapters, I posted it there and I'm having it edited now and I will have it published. But if anybody is interested, the story of that year after Stephen died, the first draft anyway, is there. And for the most part, it's free. They're my more spicy chapters because I talk really openly about sex. People are talking about it. And I think especially for women who are our age, we didn't grow up with the internet. So like we had no access to anything, like
right.
If you wanted a toy, you had to like go to the sex shop and like, who's going to do that? So I think I want to normalize this part of our lives because we are still young, we're not done. We're not done. And if I can help somebody just to feel good about their body and about their own pleasure and that they deserve to figure out what they like and ask for it, then I'm very happy to do that.
I bet you weren't expecting for the account to become such a big deal.
No, I
thought this was a little art project for yourself, basically.
I thought this was going to be like a little gallery for stuff that I had already done. And so Instagram has this thing where they'll shadow ban you. It's not really shadow banning anymore because they tell you like you're not eligible for recommendation. And I just from almost the get-go was like, you're not eligible to be recommended because, I don't know, there was like too much ass cheek or something. And so I did a little bit of advertising for my page. And that's how it ended up growing. And I got a lot of requests to do OnlyFans. And so I tried it. I tried OnlyFans and I made a lot of money, but then I hurt my back. And so I stopped doing it. So the first month that I did it, I made $8,000 after they took their cut. There is a lot of pressure from fans to have more explicit content. And it's hard. It's hard work. I think people think, oh, it's so easy to just to just do it or whatever. But most people who start, like I had been on Instagram and had grown my account for over a year before I started doing that. And I wouldn't have made any money. I wanted to try it. I wanted to see what would happen. And yeah, it was good. But then I hurt my back and I was kind of like, it's not worth it. And part of like what I do is, I wear these like super high platform shoes and I'm not really able to do that as much anymore. Like I'm pretty much sitting down if I have them on. And I just was like, it's not worth potentially hurting my back again to keep up with the account. And
the 7-inch platforms.
Yes, exactly. One thing that people should know too is I like to get the message out. If you have children, have life insurance. Have life insurance, because I wouldn't be able to do any of the things that I'm doing if I didn't have that money. Stephen was he was the earner. I mean, I worked, but he was the one who made so much more money. So, I lost like 2/3 of our monthly income when he died. And the only way to be able to keep going is because we had that life insurance. But if I didn't have that, if I had to do OnlyFans, like if that was the way to make more money, and that's the truth for a lot of women. And there's nothing wrong with it at all.
Also, cancer is very expensive, right? Even if you have good health insurance, cancers can devastate a family.
Yeah.
IVF is expensive.
Yes, IVF was expensive. Stephen was a saver. I didn't grow up with money at all. He was like slightly better off, I guess, suburbs of New Jersey. I grew up in Manhattan, but he saved. He didn't spend any money. So when we got together, he had some that we could use for IVF, and he just put his money into his 401k. He maxed it out, and then when we decided when we had Henry, we got like our own life insurance policies, like in addition to whatever we got through our jobs. And, it could have turned out that like you just pay and that you never need it. And that would be much better. And I know a lot of people think, well, then I should have just taken that money that I put aside for the life insurance policy and if you have a catastrophic loss, a few $1,000s is not going to get you. And it's just so stressful and sad and hard to lose your person and to have to worry about money in terms of like surviving and in terms of like having a roof over your head and food for your kid and stuff. I can't even imagine. I mean, I can't imagine. And it's too frightening, really.
Sure. I want to go back to something you started to talk about a little bit earlier, in that the representation of older women in media. And I know that people say, oh, like MILF erotica is so popular. But we also get such a strong message that women over 50, like once you are in the menopause window and beyond, that you are undesirable, maybe even repulsive. At least that's the message I've absorbed, right? Or did absorb before I got to this stage.
Yeah.
I remember very distinctly, I was at a boyfriend's home and we were having wine, and there was like a colonial woman like on the label. And he was like, ugh, she's in menopause. And this was 20 years ago. And I was like, ew, menopause. And I got a message. Men think you're disgusting, that you are just gross and there's no sex, no sexuality, there's nothing.
Right.
Please speak to me about that.
Yeah.
Because I'm still unpacking myself.
Yeah, I think that's bullshit, first of all. For men and women, really, the biggest sex organ that you have is your brain, right? It's not in your genitals. We don't really learn about our bodies. Women don't at all, because when we were in school, we're learning about biology is how to make baby. We are the baby making vessel. And it just so happens that to make a baby, the man has to have an organ. But we don't. And so we're not going to talk about that. And growing up and becoming sexual beings, I don't think we even knew ourselves, so that's why we took in all of these other messages from that were happening outside of ourselves. I remember my mom went through menopause in her 40s. She was relatively young, but she didn't have any issues really. And I didn't see any difference in her. She wasn't like hypersexual or anything. I mean, but I just didn't notice any difference at all. So I guess I just kind of experienced it the same way. I was older. I'm 57. So I think I was maybe like 52 or 53 when I went through it. But again, I didn't really have symptoms that I needed to take care of. And I think if I had, that would have maybe changed the way I felt about it. I like lingerie. And I don't see any women my age that are wearing any of this lingerie that I am buying. And I'm thinking, like, how are these young 20-somethings affording this stuff? I wasn't buying La Perla, which is like $400 for a pair of panties, but it's not cheap, like $100 for, a set of something. Like, how are they affording all of this? And then I wonder, like, why are they not marketing to us? Because we are supposed to have more disposable income. And I was really starting to get put off. Like, why am I giving them money if they're basically not going to like show anybody that looks like me, any like woman who's older? And so I bought a lot of like just cheap stuff from Amazon, and it looks just as good as more expensive things. But like, yeah, I began to just say, I'm not even going to buy this stuff anymore that was like moderately priced, because I spent a lot of time like tagging the companies and writing to them and I got nowhere at all. And it put me off to the whole like industry, but it didn't make me say, oh, well, I'm not worthy of it. Right. I just said, if I don't see it, so I have to be it.
Yeah, I think that's the only way through, is that we have to be, if we want the world to perceive older women differently. And not everyone, wants to take semi-nude pictures of themselves in lingerie and post them on Instagram, right? Like, that's not for everybody. But if you want to see yourself as a sexual person just for yourself, or just for your partner or partners or whatever, and you don't see it, it doesn't mean that it's not there. You have to create it.
Exactly. And I've always said, I don't expect any woman to do what I do, to post anything. And even taking pictures can be scary. But I think the more that we get in touch with our bodies and we see ourselves, we love ourselves more. And so I'm kind of like, this is a choice that you can have to do in your own home with, your own iPhone or whatever camera phone. It's not expensive. You can buy some cheap lingerie. And if you want to feel sexy in your house, you can. I just am more of an exhibitionist, I guess. I just, post the stuff, but yeah, it's my, this is your permission to, not that anyone needs permission, but like if somebody says, I'd never seen that before, it's like, well, now you have. You've seen a 57-year-old woman, in a bra, panties, or a bathing suit or whatever. And people are not grossed out, I mean.
Right. I have two things. First of all, I love that your pictures are not just hot pictures of you. There's a vulnerability to them, to your facial expression.
Mm-hmm.
They're an invitation. They're not, look at me, look at me, look at me. They're experiences with me. And I'm sure that was intentional.
Yeah. Yes. Yeah. That I wanted to show that I don't always feel great about how I look. And sometimes I feel really shitty inside. And so I want to make the extra effort to look better on the outside. But it's not a cure-all for, what ails us. But sometimes, honestly, like taking pictures of myself and doing my hair and my makeup was the only reason I would get out of bed early. And that's what kept me going. That was my reason to brush my teeth and take a shower and put on some makeup. And that allowed me, once you're dressed, you can put on regular clothes and go outside and do things. But yeah, without that, I really wasn't motivated to do anything else other than like pick up my son from school.
Right. So it was your own art therapy in a lot of ways.
Yeah, it was. And I guess after a while, I started making different reels. I taught myself some editing software, and I chose the Queen song, The Show Must Go On. And I did kind of like a little music video to it, where the sexy music video, but it's really about me like doing laundry and cooking. And even though I have a, smile on my face or whatever, I'm breaking inside, but the show like has to go on. It has to keep going. And That was another way of just being creative.
Yeah, you've defied the expectation of, and I think this really is only for women, this expectation of your husband dies, you put the black dress on, you shut the door to pleasure, you shut the door to sexuality, you shut the door to male interest, you shut the door to beauty, and that's just it for you. You could have just put on your black dress, your pearls, your widow's veil, and been in your little widow shroud.
Yeah.
And that is something that you chose not to do. And that's a defiance of social expectation.
Yeah, I guess I wasn't thinking of it. It was more like a survival mechanism. But also, that never felt like me. I was, I guess, 54 when I just turned 54 when he died. And I wasn't ready to like be invisible or, like I didn't want to shut myself away. So yeah, I put on like the black sexy maid's outfit and some heels and took pictures. But yeah, I think the times have definitely changed too. The Brady Bunch. Alice was supposed to be, I think she was 45.
I know.
Right? You look at like what 45 and 55 look like all those years ago, and it's just completely different now.
Have you gotten pushback from your loved ones, from your friends, from the other mothers at the school? Like, and if so, how have you dealt with it? Or does no one know? Someone must know.
I am open about it, but I don't like make a big deal. So here, that's the one thing. It's like, because my son is, he's 12, going to be 13 in February, and his friends are starting to have more autonomy, and like, they're not on social media, but if their parents like knew about it, I guess it's like an open secret. Like I don't advertise it, but from the few people that know in my circle, like nobody has said anything. Now, my brother, who is a couple years younger than me, he is like 2 years younger. He knows, but he doesn't want us to look at it. I mean, he's just like, right? Because this is my brother. And so I want to keep it away from Henry but at the same time, I'm working my message is like, our bodies are beautiful, right? And that there's an age appropriate, way that we talk about bodies. There's a different way that I talk about me than, you and your friends talk about you. And sex is not dirty or horrible, but like, it's not appropriate for a topic to be talking about with you.
Right.
And I guess if he has questions, that's fine. If he'd asked me, what does a crush feel like? And if he has questions about it, I am very open to answering all those things. But I'm not ashamed of what I do. And my thing is, like, I just cannot educate all of the young people, all the young boys in society. And so a lot of the writing that I do now is about, our misogynistic culture and, violence against women perpetrated by men, violence against other men and children perpetrated by men. And, what are some of the causes of that? And how can we do something to, I don't know about fix it, but to start off on a better foot in terms of like getting rid of strict gender roles where boys think that there are certain girl traits and certain boy traits that doesn't serve anybody. So yeah, being a mom is hard.
First of all, being a person is hard.
Being a person with a body is difficult.
Oh, for sure. Being a woman in midlife with a body that's changing is difficult.
Yeah.
And I'm glad that you're here to bring a different perspective, that you don't have to just crumple up like a leaf and blow away in the wind. There are other choices for us.
Yeah, there are other choices, and we don't have to be what we were, right? Like we are beautiful and exactly what we're meant to be in this time in our life, and that is amazing and beautiful and to be celebrated, most of all by ourselves.
I love it. I'm going to move into our speed round on that note. Speed round, easy questions though, fun questions. Coffee or tea?
Coffee.
Do you have anything in your coffee?
I have like oatmeal in it.
Nice.
That's it.
Classic. Yeah, the new classic.
A lot of other women are telling me that like dairy is starting to bother them a little bit more now that they like are a little bit older. And I found the same thing. That's why I chose oatmeal.
Me too. Dairy kind of bothers my tummy. Favorite snack?
I like ice cream. Okay. I know it's not really a snack, but I guess maybe chips, potato chips.
I mean, sound like good snacks to me. What is the name of the Queen song?
Oh, The Show Must Go On.
Is that one of your favorite songs?
Yeah, that is one of my favorite songs. I love Queen. They're like amazing. And that song, I can listen to it like over and over. What I've been listening to most recently, though, is Beck, that grunge music from the 90s. I've just been like very into that lately. So, but yeah, I'm a disco queen too. I mean, ABBA.
If you could go back to your 30-year-old self and give her a piece of advice, what would you tell her?
I'd tell her, you are so freaking young. You are young and you have so much life ahead of you. No decision, is set in stone. You'll be able to pivot. And yeah, I just remember feeling old at 30 And now when I look at 30-year-olds, I'm just like, you have so much ahead of you. Don't think that like you have to pick one thing now and stick with it for the rest of your life.
Perfect. Amy Gabrielle, thank you so much for being on my show. I appreciate you so much. It's been lovely to get to know you as a person. We met on Instagram. And thank you. And when you hope your book will be released January, February of 2025?
I hope. There's an article about me in a magazine that's coming out. It's called Get Griefy. And it's on, they have, so like Get Griefy is the magazine, and it comes out quarterly. So the next edition is coming out mid-November, and an article about me is like 3 pages. So I'm excited about that.
Perfect. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for listening to Your Magical Midlife. I'm Kate Higgins, your host. You can follow me on Instagram at Your Magical Midlife. You can also check out my offerings on my website, which is www.yourmagicalmidlife.com. I offer individualized coaching for women 45 plus who are seekers, dreamers, and out-of-box thinkers. I also offer luxury retreats that include ritual, rites of passage, and ceremony for women 45 and beyond. I'd be so excited to work with you. Also, if you're feeling kind and you've enjoyed this episode, please leave me a 5-star review, as it opens this podcast to a broader audience and keeps me in those pesky algorithms. Thank you so much for your partnership with me. I appreciate you. Have a great week.